applied to avoid heat stress in maize, including cultivar switching, uh, cultivar switching, sowing date, and even expanding cropping system to cooler location and high latitude. Crop simulation modeling have been applied to investigate the long-term assessment of adaptation strategies uh, in a different location and season. So the objective of the current study was to investigate the frequency of occurrence of heat stress, extreme temperature above 36 during flowering, which is sensitive to uh, extreme temperature, and the role of adaptation strategy, including changing in sowing date, cultivar changing, and expansion of cropping system to cooler location in mitigating the impact of climate change and reducing the risk of heat stress. The current study focused on 24 locations in 16 provinces in western and south of Iran, as you can see on the map, of total of 31 provinces available in Iran. These locations first categorized into 5 climate type, as you can see: arid hot, arid and temperate, semi-arid hot, and semi-arid temperate, semi-arid cold, according to Köppen methodology. Daily climatic data for the baseline period of 1980 to 2010 was gathered from Iran Meteorological Organization. Future climate change was projected using delta scenario of AgMIP10 general circulation model and climate scenario generation tools in R as introduced in AgMIP, the agricultural model intercomparison and improvement project. 5 general circulation model for the mid-period of future 2050 under 2 emission scenario of representative concentration pathway for 0.5 and 8.5 was used. These are, as you can see, these are the name of the general circulating model. AgMIP maize model was used. You know that AgMIP has an engine with different modules which are switched on to that. We use the maize module, soil water, because the different location has a different number of irrigation as we ask using the questionnaire from the farmers. The number of irrigation range from 8 number per season to 18 number. And management module, including irrigation, was applied in this current study. The model was previously evaluated under different climate and soil and across management conditions, including plant density, sowing date, nitrogen regime, water regime, and in both potential and water limited condition. And the results showed that there was a good agreement between observed and simulated of dry matter LAI and grain yield. As you know, as I said earlier, flowering phase in maize is very sensitive to high temperature of above 36, as reported by so many researchers worldwide. Accordingly, the high risk window was applied and calculated as the number of days having a maximum temperature above 36 during 10 days pre-flowering and flowering phase in AgMIP. Two adaptation strategy was investigated. First one was the different contrasting maturity cultivar, a late maturity cultivar as the most dominant and commercial maize in Iran, and an early maturity cultivar. The second adaptation strategy was sowing date at 3 levels, the common sowing date at each location, and an early sowing date which was 20 days prior to this common sowing date, and a late sowing date which was defined 20 days after the common sowing date. Long-term simulation experiment consisted of a factorial of 24 location, 2 future emission scenario, I mean 2 RCPs, 3 sowing date, which some location sow maize in summer and some other sow maize in spring, 2 cultivar, 31 year, and 5 general circulation model, and a total of 45,000 simulation was run. All simulation was conducted under water limited condition, as the number of irrigation was different among location. And a total of 100 million data point was analyzed using R. At baseline result, simulation results showed that most of the location and region, such as arid hot, arid temperate, semi-arid cool, that you can see my mouse, semi-arid hot and semi-arid temperate, are currently experiencing heat stress above 36, and so that about 58% of simulation are experiencing heat stress. In the future, I mean RCP 4 and 8, in some location and common management practice, maize crop experiences temperature above 38 in a base management scenario. I mean the late sowing date and a late maturity cultivar in a hot region. In the worst case management, in some seasons, maize crop experiences extreme temperature above 43 degrees. In other, as you can see, the red color in the map, these are the semi-arid hot region, the first row and the fourth row. In other temperate and cold region, the result was promising, as I will show you later in the slides. In this graph, we simulated the percentage of the number of maize flowering days with temperature above 30. There was 36. There was a large variability across region. As you can see, the above arid hot, arid temperate, semi-arid cold, semi-arid hot, and semi-arid temperate in different years and different adaptation strategy. As you can see, in the hot region, the first column and the fourth column, there was a substantial frequency of heat stress, and the frequency of heat stress was increased in the future climate change, and data but was not shown in this graph. As I mentioned earlier, we simulated the high-risk window as defined it as the number of days having a maximum temperature above 36. You know, the gray box in this graph that showed the line of the high-risk window, which was higher in hot area compared with the temperate and cold area. The high-risk window was expanded. The high-risk window was expanded by 16 and 26 days during future climate change for RCP 4.5 and 8.5 respectively. However, the result was completely different in a region. In hot region with summer maize cultivation, the best combination was a late sowing date by a late maturity cultivar. However, under these conditions, maize crops face with high temperature above 38 degrees. In temperate region with spring season cultivation, the result was promising, so that an early maturity plus an early sowing date could escape from the high risk window. So it is better to sow sooner and using the early maturity cultivar. And in cold region, semi-arid cold, as you can see, both combination of late maturity and early maturity, and also late sowing and early sowing was completely promising, and both combination resulted that maize flowering did not coincide with the high risk window in all seasons. So,
So you have 1 minute if you can start wrapping up.
okay, I'm going to finish. So I'm going to go to conclude that the summer season maize did not show a good performance in either RCPs in the future, even by applying the base G by M, so that 97% of simulation years was the condition that maize crop experienced maximum temperature above the critical point. However, rising temperature in cold region as a result of global warming will provide better climatic conditions for maize growth and consequently reduce heat risk during flowering by choosing the optimal sowing date. I mean an early maturity cultivar by early sowing date. Also, flowering time, flowering time could be adjusted by a suitable G by M to reduce heat stress risk, which is late maturity cultivar by late sowing for hot region and early maturity by early sowing for temperate and cold region. These findings are important for similar arid base areas worldwide where policymakers should invest in and apply policies to adapt and shift maize cultivation production to cold region. If you wanted to contact me, please use my personal website and emails.
Thank you, Reza.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
While we change the slides, maybe we have time for one question. Anybody? No. Reza, one question. Are you planning to? So it seems like you are following the AgMIP protocols to do this research. Are you planning to add the economics component at some point?
Unfortunately, we did not consider the economic component because we did this experiment, the simulation experiment, around 7-8 years ago. So we did not wanted to add the economic component which is available in AppSim and also in AgMIP. So in the future, we will include this component to evaluate some indexes regarding economic module, as you mentioned and focused on.
Okay, great. Thank you. Next, we have two presentations from the Foresight for Food initiative. We're going to start. Yeah. So when it's 3 minutes, I'm gonna.
What is it? 3 minutes left.
Left.
What is it?
And it's the red car.
Okay. Are you going to use the bell or not? I'm afraid of the bell.
Yeah. Oh yeah, have the bell too.
You can use it.
Yeah, it's true. You didn't see that.
Oh,
Yeah, all the.
yeah. How about the guns there? I'm ready with the time.
Okay, you can start.
Okay, we're switching gears towards Foresight for Food System Transformation. And I'm going to share with you some experiences of simulation modeling with some participatory approach. So it's a mix of participation or workshops with the quantitative modeling results. And I'll go back. How can I go back? Now. Yes. Yeah. So this work is like really like a lot of people is involved in this project, and I'm one of them. I'm a part of Bachelor in Social and Economic Research, but also there is colleagues from Oxford University collaborating in this project. It's a large collaboration, which is embedded in the context of the Foresight for Food initiative. This initiative is trying to use foresight analysis, scenario analysis for food system change. It's trying to see change in food system in different countries. And it's a large network. I think a couple of people in the room know or are part of this network. And a lot of international agencies, institutions, funders. And the idea, there's a certain component of enhancing capacity building in the countries. So the people in these countries grasp the idea of foresight and how to use foresight for food system change, which is basically try to look into the future and try to see which action you can take now to avoid some risks that are coming in the future. And there is a lot of exchange. There is even actually in Jordan this year a global workshop with the idea to share experiences and lessons from the different countries that participate in this initiative. And as part of this initiative, so what I do is part of this foster program. And this foster program works in Bangladesh, Jordan, where I'm involved, Kenya, and Uganda. And we are wrapping up the project. We're finishing this year. And there's been a lot of workshops going on around. So I've been in three times in Jordan already, engaging with the stakeholders to share the results of the modeling that I do. And this research is funded, or this project is funded by the Netherlands, and it's an alignment of collaboration of Oxford, Wageningen, and very importantly, in-country partners, which are very, very key to engage and connect with the countries, the people in the countries, the stakeholders. So this is the context of what I'm going to present. So from these 4 countries, I'm going to present the case of Jordan. To get an idea of the context of Jordan. So Jordan, I mean, it's a country in the Middle East that is a lot of, it's one of the most water-stressed countries in the world. And also there's a country where there is almost no land to increase or expand to form agricultural production. At the same time, it's a very rare mix because still the country has big plans to become a big food export hub in the region. And it's a bit contradictory because the country is also highly food dependent. So the country imports a lot of wheat from outside and also other foods. But still, they have big plans of expanding based on a lot of technological investments. So keep that in mind for what is coming later. So what do we do here? So we use a magnet. Magnet is a generative model. It's basically a GTAP-based model with some adjustments, which enables long-term simulations to quantify the impacts of scenarios to have impacts on society, the economy, the environment, and facilitates the identification of future trade-offs of impacts if there is a shock or a policy implemented. So which are the trade-offs that can be faced in the future? And also, we can also explore some synergies, some win-win situations. As you can see, I'm simplifying a lot. For those who know the model, I'm not showing a lot of the assumptions and the concept behind it because I'm trying to pretty much replicate what I do in the countries. In the countries, people don't want to know that many times they don't want to know the assumptions, the technical part. So you should tell them what is the model useful for. This is the way we more or less present this in the countries. Basically, it's a large global macroeconomic model with 160 regions, and one of them is Jordan. And a very good representation of the food system, which is key for this type of analysis. So the objective is to explore the future implications for the society, the economy, and the environment. In Jordan, I think everyone knows this, we always need a baseline scenario or a usual scenario to see what is happening in the future if the current existing trends keep going for the future. So we develop a baseline scenario in this case, or we call it in this case business as usual. And this is based pretty much on the shared current pathways, SP2, just to give an idea. And the alternative, we design a desired scenario. This was not only something that I proposed or something in my mind. It's something that actually the stakeholders in Jordan propose. And based on the narratives that they propose, we translated that into a modeling scenario, which we call in this case desired scenario. which is a bit of positive, but it's still in the plausible side of scenarios. And in a sense, a more prosperous, healthy, and sustainable food system. So how do the scenarios look like? So this is just scenario. So we try to say narrative towards 2040. So our scenario normally run towards 2050. But in this context, people want to know, like, really what is happening in the next 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, because they want to take decisions now. So we narrow that a bit earlier to 2040. And we expect in this scenario a bit of more modest GDP growth. And population, we expect a certain growth to reach 60 million people. It's actually one of the trickiest aspects because in this type of projections, normally the government has to take into account migration coming, like refugees coming from the West Bank, the way it's called there. So there's a lot of uncertainty in the population projections. We use a midway scenario in population growth. We're expecting diets, a transition towards a Western diet, more meat, more fast foods, more processed foods. We expect high productivity driven by inputs used, like fertilizers. We model certain level of barriers on imports of cereals. So typically there is conflicts in this area. So there is typically impacts of limitations to import cereals from Syria, and these type of things. So we implemented a couple of trade restrictions in this simulation. And we expect some climate change impacts that affect agricultural productivity. So the size scenario, so it's a little bit more accelerated economic growth, which is actually in the range of what the Jordanian government is projecting in their economic modernization vision. So it's in the range of what they're expecting as a sort of positive figure. Population will grow a little bit less to reach 30 million by 2040. This is very important. So usually in these scenarios, we model the class diet as a reference for a sustainable, healthy diet. But in these countries, it makes more sense to use a national diet, like the Mediterranean diet, which is actually very well aligned with the class diet. But one deviation, for instance, less fish, because they don't have a seaside. So basically, fish is not so high in consumption, but it's very well aligned with the low consumption of meat that is proposed in the class diet. A lot of fruits and vegetable consumption, and it's a reference, and it's a national reference of a healthy diet. We also expect cut in food and waste of 50%. Then a higher land and feed productivity happening in the future. We more or less expect, it's a bit tricky, but then no regional conflicts happening more in the future. And some reduced vulnerability of climate change. So a bit of the concepts we use for this guy and for the productivity, we gather from SP1, like a more positive and sustainable pathway. So all this multidimensional simulation. So idea of the implications that we measure from 2025 to 2040. So first we have business as usual, select indicators of society and economy. So expect in general, so we have 4 indicators: how healthy is the diet, self-sufficiency in the country, which is very important to assess, food affordability and food exports. And in general, we expect that the diets are going in this westernization, so healthier diets in the future, more import dependency in agri-food. I think our model expects usually an increase in wages in the future, so food affordability increases, and food exports somewhat increase. In the environment, I think the model expects like a very important tech change things happening. So we expect that the country will need less water to produce foods. And it more or less makes sense with the current narrative because Jordan is a very resilient country. So over time, they have been discussing water stress for many years, but still they are able to source domestic consumption. Land pressure doesn't move so much, but they expect an intensification of fertilizer application and more GHG emissions. What about the desired scenario? So in a way, we expect a more green picture in this heat map, and that's the case. Of course, diets going in a healthier direction. We expect somewhat an increase in or improvement in self-sufficiency, food affordability, and the food exports expand even more. And this guy, I'm going to talk a little bit more about it later. This actually is part of an efficiency paradox that happens here. In the environment, not so positive picture, but still we see that GHG emissions. Oh my God, ready meals. Yeah. Okay. But why these red numbers? So basically, we see that the healthy diets are you need to produce more foods, more vegetables. So that has a pressure on production and more input use on fertilizer. That's one of the reasons why fertilizers expand a bit more. And of course, population is growing. That's another factor. But also in this future, Jordan is some sort of first mover. It becomes more competitive. So basically, there is incentives to keep producing more for the export markets, and that has a push on more emissions, for instance. So as you can see, in the business as usual scenario, we expect on healthier diets, more import dependency, more fertilizer use, and more GHG emissions. So we really need a holistic approach. So not only dietary change, but other aspects. But still, we need additional policies to address some environmental trade-offs. Some lessons that I will quickly try to explain. So these approaches, normally, we found that actually participatory modeling approach is a good way of increasing the level of trust in simulation work. We actually triggered very interesting conversations after sharing these modeling results with stakeholders in the country. So this work, I think we found that this type of results, of big picture results, can help to start co-creating local solutions. So there is a strong focus now on food loss and waste reduction. And actually our results that actually food loss and waste is the policy that leads to the least trade-offs. So we actually, that idea sort of stick in the minds of the stakeholders. And that's a good starting point to start devising actual solutions to go in that direction. And this is very important as well. So finding the right in-country partners, this one was very important. So we managed to sit and share results with NASHMA, which is a food security organization that is led by the sister of the former king in Jordan. So this was actually a very good contact to spread our sort of news. You want to know more? You can check this paper by my colleague Thijs de Lange, who wouldn't be here because time difference in the Netherlands is very large right now. Well, this study is a good reference to see the methods we use in this study. Yeah. And then it was one last bit of marketing, I think. So we have other simulation tools for food system for foresight. So normally we have national level results, but also we can produce some national implications. Some work by my colleague Michi van Dijk. So actually, we could have the option to any result we got from Magnet to a top-down approach, and actually have implications for rural, urban populations, for undernourishment and the healthiness of the diet. So this is a direction actually that we see more and more the need for this type of analysis in the countries. So thanks for the attention, and yeah, you have questions. Yeah.
I propose that we finish the forest side for food.
Oh yeah, and then we
got
got
questions.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So who's next? Is Keith?
Is Daniel there in the room?
Yes, here.
Okay, yep. Daniel was going to kick us off then.
Yeah, we're putting the.
Who's got the slides up? Is Johannes here?
They're loaded. Yeah.
All right.
Oh, here's it.
I'm going to be very brief here, so before I can hand it off to Keith and Johannes to give the bulk of the presentation. But this effort here is also coming from the same work from Foresight for Food, and there we go. We've got the exact same slide that Marco has, but one of the things I'd like just to highlight is some of the effort that this group is doing is really important because it's looking at foresight in a very holistic fashion. And so there's a lot of different communities that work in foresight. Obviously, we're one of those groups, and we tend to be more on the quantitative side, but there's a lot of groups that really work on foresight more from the qualitative side. And one of the efforts that Foresight for Food is doing is trying to find better ways to link both that qualitative foresight and that quantitative foresight. So the presentation that Marcos was showing was a bit of that, where you're bringing in these sort of participatory methods so that you can develop scenarios that you then quantify and put into food system models. But there's a lot of work that's also just more in terms of developing narratives and thinking about like more broad futures. And so this effort is really trying to kind of go across the whole spectrum of foresight and how it can help us think about futures and what we might need to do to transform food systems to achieve healthier, more sustainable food systems. So this presentation specifically is going to be looking at one of the working groups that's more on the quantitative side. And so it's looking at the role of simulation modeling. And this work has brought together a group of experts and that are using different types of simulation models and tools and how they've been applied in different settings. And so the rest of this presentation that will be done by Keith and Johannes will try to look at what's the value proposition that simulation models bring to the table? How can they help to inform foresight? How can they help to ask questions about where we need to go, where we're at, and trying to get a sense of like how these can help to inform change and action. And then we'll also then have a bit of a description of an inventory of work that's been going to trying to sort of document all the different tools that there are, and to be able to provide some sort of kind of reference for people who are trying to think of, well, if I want to do X, Y, and Z thing, what tools are available that do that, so that you don't have to try to go through a whole lot of different documentation, but can kind of come to one spot to get at least a sense of what tools are available and what they can do. And so with that, I will hand that over then to Keith to continue.
Thanks very much, Daniel. And thank you also, Marcos, for that was an excellent kind of example of the things that this working group was asked to think about, which is specifically to help a community that is largely coming from a qualitative participatory sort of foresight approach to understand better what use they might make of quantitative simulation modeling, and if/when they are convinced of that, how do they choose among different types of models that they might use. So this working group was asked to just provide a little bit of background thinking on different types of modelings. The title here, Explore the Future of Simulation Modeling, is perhaps a little bit too ambitious, but rather to step back and just talk about different types of models and how those might relate to qualitative participatory processes. So next slide, please. There we go. So in thinking about the future, I mean, there are many different ways that you could approach that. And one of those has to do with looking backwards. If you've got great data, that's always a good place to start. Using statistical models, that's one of the tools available. But there are many others. Johannes, you can go ahead and click through the next one. A whole variety of tools ranging from simple to complex, some of them backward looking, some of them explicitly forward looking. It might be very implicit, something like a mental model, a hunch, to a back of the envelope estimate, ranging all the way up through participatory approaches, which are more on the qualitative side, simulation models, which is at the heart of the AgMIP community, on up to artificial intelligence. And so a whole variety of different tools. The point of this discussion was to point out there's no one that's better than all of the others. It really depends on the use case that you have in mind. And in some cases, a mental model may be all you need. When you're looking at something like food systems that are very complicated, a more complicated approach is called for. And one of the challenges and advantages that we all know about simulation models is that they require us to be very explicit about all of the assumptions that we're making. And that's a really useful part of the process. Johannes, can you click once more, please, on this slide? Or do I have that control now?
I think it's in the room.
Okay, yeah, if someone can just click.
Tried, but it's not.
There's a point there.
So Keith, I think you have the control.
Oh, there we go. Okay, so this is a quote you're all familiar with, that all models are wrong, but some are useful. It's sometimes targeted particularly at simulation models, but George Box was actually a statistician. And that's a good reminder that even when you have good data, you're imposing some sort of structure whenever you try and interpret that. They're wrong because all models are simplifications of reality by design, but some of them are useful, and they're useful if they can inform decisions that we make. And I will click again. I've got just one more slide, and there we go. This is it. It's simply reinforcing the point that Marcos already illustrated very nicely. You need both to be useful. You need both quantitative and qualitative approaches. Your quantitative analysis needs to grow out of real concerns and real questions that are confronting decision makers. What it can offer is hopefully rigorous analysis that can structure the way they think about those challenges and the options that they are that are available to address them. And the purpose of this working group and what Johannes is going to talk about next is just helping to understand differences between some of the modeling tools that are available in order to help a dialogue like this start with a right mix of tools. So Johannes, over to you.
Thank you very much, Keith. Just to check, will I also get the control to change the slides? I don't already have it, I think at least.
Something changed.
I think I still have it. I can keep going, Johannes, if you want, or if they want to hand it over to you, that's fine.
I think I got it now. This is yeah, exactly, perfect. Now I think I should have it. So I can relieve you of that duty, Keith. Basically, as both Daniel and Keith explained, what we have done as part of this group, which I should mention also involves Aline Mounier from the Fable Consortium, who's not here today. But we have started a comparison of different models that that can model the development in the AFOLU sector for a number of reasons. The first one being to guide the choices of the choice of an appropriate model by teams that are starting to model the AFOLU sector, that come into this question and that want to start addressing it through quantitative modeling, and also to provide information on how these models can be accessed, which can sometimes be a tricky endeavor in itself. The second reason, sorry, that was the first two. The third reason is also to identify gaps in existing modeling, in existing models that offer, to identify the issues that are insufficiently covered by these existing models. And lastly, also to contribute to existing platforms for exchanges among modelers and non-modelers, exchanges in the foresight community on the advantages and drawbacks of different models and how to address a specific model objective. Let me see if I can move forward. Yeah, basically, exactly. So how are we doing this? There are two parts. The first one is that we're building a database that will allow a structured comparison of different models based on three things: the issues that they can be used to analyze, the drivers of change that they can integrate, and their level of complexity. We will then, or we have then built a user-friendly tool that based on this database is able to identify suitable or models that correspond with criteria that users can insert. So that corresponds with the first objective that I mentioned in the previous slides, to be able to kind of guide users who start analyzing the land use transition through modeling. We have three. It's a quite open database, but we have set three criteria for model inclusion, or for including models in the database. It must be a quantitative model is the first one. Second, it must be possible to test several scenarios over a period of several decades. So looking at the long term. Again, the previous presentation illustrated this very well. the comparison between the BAU and the more ambitious scenario, for instance. Third, the model must be able to calculate at least the greenhouse sources and sinks from a broad range of land use, agriculture and land use activities. So based on this, we've already included 7 models, but we are looking to include more, and I'll get back to that at the very end. The right box lists some of the ones that we are interested in, but this is not an exhaustive list at all. Now I have this slide and the next, so I should be wrapping up very shortly. As I mentioned, there are 3 criteria that or 3 kind of groups of criteria that we use to compare the models. The first one is, which are the issues that can be analyzed? This includes, for instance, land use change and management, production, consumption, and trade of land use and agricultural products, greenhouse gases, food security, biodiversity, etc. The second one is the drivers of change that the model can integrate. This includes, for instance, demography and population, the GDP, different policy instruments such as trade, economic policy instruments and other regulations, demand preferences, etc. And the last one is around the model complexity. So, for instance, the programming language that's used, the areas of expertise required to manipulate and work with the model, time required to be able to use the model in an autonomous way, etc. And I don't know exactly how I'm doing with time, but I'm assuming that we're running towards the end of it. So just very quickly, in terms of the next steps, there are some things that we have in the pipeline. The first one is to expand the database. So as I mentioned, there are a bunch, like many models that we would be interested in adding here. What we have noticed over the past is that obviously the people who have experience working with a given model is the best place to kind of provide that information. So if you work with a model that you think would fit, please you feel free to get in touch with me, Keith, Daniel, or Aline, and we'd be happy to continue that conversation. We'd also want to continue our engagement with the modeling community and the foresight community. This is part of that, this presentation, to refine the database and the tool. We're looking to publish a working papers to document this work, and to ideally, if we can find the time and the funding for that, to put the tool online to make it, to really ensure that it's user friendly. And there I stop. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we have time for a few questions. Anybody questions for Marcos or Johannes or Daniel? Oh, yes.
Yeah, thank you so much for the great presentations. Marcos, I was wondering, it was really very interesting about the participatory aspect, and I was wondering, could you elaborate a little bit on this? So what part of the process is participatory already in the scenario analysis? I think I saw something.
Yeah.
But also later, do you have some feedback sessions or?
Yeah, we had different sessions. We had online sessions with because we found some local research partners. We had interviews first in the first round, and then we organized, I think I participated in 3 workshops where actually, I went there and shared the results, but also I pick up elements from the workshops.
Yeah.
Like in one of these workshops, they design which are the features of the design scenario. So I was there and I pick up some of those elements and I put them together into the design scenario that I modeled. So it's pretty much data validation, interviews, and workshops.
So also the diet, the national diet, for example.
Yes, it was provided by somebody in the Ministry of Health, and they helped us to translate it into in text by food group. So we consulted them to get to the diet we actually modeled. Yeah.
Just a follow-up question to that. Could you say, who were your stakeholders or what type of stakeholders you have? And were those the same at the beginning and throughout the project, or they change?
I think pretty much the groups stay the same, but there was some evolution over time. So actually we attracted more interest and more people came. And actually the interaction with the sister of the former king, it was in the last trip. But in general, we have people from the private sector. We have people who are I recall farmers, farmers we had there, but also people from the universities, people from the government. Yeah, in general, and also some international agencies. Yeah.
There was a question there. Yes.
I think that was a nice presentation. I was wondering, given the two scenarios that you developed, the business as usual, and then the desired maybe pathway. And I was surprised to see that even for the decline pathway, because an accelerated growth also used quite substantial amount of fertilizers as inputs to achieve the high productivity. So I was wondering exactly what the main differences are between the business as usual and then the high productivity, the desired aspect.
Yeah, there were many. In essence, we had the same drivers. So one of the difference was, for instance, a very big one is economic growth. So you had like a 5.6% in the same scenario and like 2.6 in the usual.
What informed the economic growth?
People, yeah, the Jordanian government. We took that from a Jordanian modernization plan, like a vision they have for the future, and they provided the figure.
Yeah, but I'm just wondering what is driving that economic growth.
Oh yeah. There is not so much details about it. So basically, we took into account. So basically, we are assuming like all the strategies and policies that the Jordanian government put into this modernization plan is what is supposed to back up this high economic growth. But we're actually in our model. We have done model particularly those policies. We just put the GDP growth, for instance, in the model. That's what we input in the model. But behind that is we are assuming all the policies that the Jordanian government are putting into place work and lead to this high level of growth.
We have one more question.
Yeah, thanks a lot for the presentations. I like this idea of mixing qualitative and quantitative at least, very critical. My understanding, you have scenarios toward 2040, right? Desired and business as usual. You quantify a set of indicators, very, very fine. Isn't there an extra step where you try and design the trajectories towards these different scenarios, and then you try and think about what is the collective action, what are the policy intervention that are required to make sure that we don't stick on business as usual, but go to the design.
Yeah. Always when you show these results, there is this question like, oh yeah, you design on this very fancy scenario, and then so what? What can you do with that? So basically, I think that part was more on my colleagues who were working on the qualitative part. So basically, in practical terms, in one of these workshops, I presented these scenarios. I think that create a great impression. The scenario results is talking to people, and they were really started a big discussion about it. And then later, they started working in groups to design which actions can take you to those scenarios in a way. Yeah, particularly Food Dozen Ways was a big one where they work a lot on it, and they are still designing local solutions for that. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. And thank you, Keith and Johannes. Keith, I'm going to reach out later to you because as we discussed last year, I'm interested in seeing how AgMIP can also be part of that modeling group and include all the other AgMIP models at the subnational level as part of that database.
Is there time for one question for the other presentation from me? Okay. So Daniel, what is the value proposition of condition modeling? Is that coming later, or do we have an already draft of this? In a nutshell, right?
What's the value of it?
You said you were going to create a value proposition of simulation modeling, like try to create the idea about this.
Oh, I think that kind of the efforts it's doing here is just to show that how do these tools help you with making decision making. So I think having these participatory type of exercises then makes these tools more pragmatic and tangible, as opposed to just something that's in a scientific journal article that may or may not be easy to understand.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, let's move to Team Falconer.
Right, hi everyone. I feel a bit uncomfortable because many of you are presenting something so holistic, so comprehensive, and now I'm down to maize and fertilizer. But let's see how it goes. It's very much on risk management, intensification of crop production and smallholder system, and a case study in Senegal. Something I've been quite obsessed over the past years is trying to understand how can we de-risk agricultural intensification smallholder systems. And for you to understand what is at stake, this long-term experiment in Zimbabwe is 11 years of data. It's maize growth without fertilizer. You see yields around 1.5 tons per hectare, not so variable across the year. You want to increase this, increase production, very critical for food security in this environment. You increase production, but you also increase variability a lot, right? You can reach 8 tons, but not all the years. In some years, you barely get more than what you get without fertilizer. Your nitrogen agronomic efficiency, how much kgs of maize you obtain per kilogram of nitrogen added, also very variable from 0 to 60. 20 is the median, is roughly what you need for it to be, for this strategy to be profitable. So half of the year, this is not profitable for farmers. So it's really recognizing the need to intensify crop production in this system. How can we de-risk it? There are two questions. Are there areas where the response is high, but the variability is also high? I call these high priority areas. And then are there ways of understanding what drives this variability? So I've tried to design a simple framework here. It's this idea of looking at variability of the response, the standard deviation, and the average value. And you have these high priority areas where the response is high, but the variability is also very high. We want to see where these places are in sub-Saharan Africa, and I will be taking, because we've not been so far yet, taking the example of central Senegal. Of course, we like to calibrate our models. You see groups within the AgMIP community who don't really care about calibration. We do care about it. We want local data. So these are the sites where we have good experiments with observation of soil water, leaf area ingot, in-season biomass growth, all these things that are very useful. And what I'm trying to present on these two graphs is that we're covering a diversity of climate, temperature, rainfall, and also a diversity of soil conditions, water holding capacity, and initial total nitrogen. This is we've used three models. It's the typical AgMIP idea that more models are better than one, and when you average them out, how are they better at reproducing what you've observed. We've used three of them: STIX, a French model, that everybody knows, and Celsius, the model of a colleague at CIRAD. We try as much as possible to harmonize the calibration, making sure there's models that don't go in all different directions. If you look at presentation within AgMIP, everybody is worried about this. You do multi-model comparison, you have one model going here and another going there. You don't know what you're talking about. We try to reduce this. And this is the steps trying to harmonize as best as possible the calibration. This is what we get with the validation, the calibration data. Rather good RMSE, 30% relative, and model efficiency of 0.59, which is not so bad. When you go to the validation data, it's using long-term experiment where there's less detailed data, but more years. You see that the quality of the fit drastically decreases. That's something that we want to fix. Maybe you need to improve the calibration skills. But what is interesting here, I think, is using that framework. Variability here, average response here. You see that there's a variability across the models. It's all the line here, vertical and horizontal. But despite the model uncertainty, you're able to discriminate sites with very different behavior. Here, this site is Ghana, much more variability, higher response, and much more variability than this site in Rwanda. So I believe we have something useful here. Trying to apply this to a case study. This is central Senegal. This is millet growing area, but with also potential to expand maize production, demand on the markets for poultry feeds. Maize could be an opportunity. So we're trying to look at what does it mean in terms of intensification and risk. We're trying to reduce the size of the problem here. So we are going spatial. This is the grid where we simulate our maize yields. We picked an optimal cultivar. So we looked at different duration and we picked the one that gave us the best yield so that this cultivar choice doesn't mix up with the signal we get. Same for optimal planting date. Not trying to look at too many planting days. Look at the one that gives us the best yield on average. This is what we need especially. And this is what we get. All this pixel of this area, you see that actually there's huge variability in terms of the average response. In some areas, maybe the soil is already rich. You apply fertilizer, you don't get more yield. In some areas, the response is much higher. It means maybe the soil are poor and they need nutrient application. And also huge variability in terms of the response. So that could be the soil, some are shallow, some are deep. That could be the climate. Maybe the rainfall is very variable from a year to another. And if you look at these high priority areas, these pixels here, you can then see where they are situated. Okay, in this area that we simulated is rather the northern fringe of the central Senegal. This somehow makes sense with what we know about the climate. This is the driest area. Landscape study, how does it work? If we pick different locations, that's one thing is ongoing. We're really going to try and expand this in different locations. Maybe to conclude the value of the approach, we also teamed up with a researcher at the University of Utrecht. They're running global hydrology models. And with their model, they simulated Senegal and they're able to tell for a given location, can you build a dam? Is there enough water? We'll build a small dam 4 or 5 meter high so you can use it for irrigation without endangering too much the other uses of that water, right? So this is the map of where they simulated dams could be built. And you see, I mean, this is not very encouraging, but these high priority areas for de-risking maize production, they don't match with the areas where you could build this dam. So there's a mismatch, means you need other types of intervention if you want to better risk management for maize production. Conclusion perspective, there are some spatial contrasts in the variability of maize response to intensification. And I think the next steps is really try and unravel what drives this variability. Is it soil type? Is it climate? Is it something else? How does the model uncertainty also play in that message? And I'm done. Thank you very much. Questions?
Yes, try to see like how the default model, like before the calculation, how the model what's the RMSE or other evaluation metric for the validation part. Like cause I saw like after calculation RMSE is like 71%.
So that's validation data set.
Yeah,
where RMSE is 70.
Yeah,
Calibration is 30. But that's a good question because I mean all these calibration sites, they were given to maize modelers. We had 25 models, and the accuracy was quite good. For them, when it's individual modeling groups doing their own calibration, they all have their own assumptions. So in the end, when you're trying to use this different calibration for different models and you go into sensitivity analysis or a regional application, you see that suddenly that all these models, they go in completely different direction. So what we did here is try and not use the individual groups calibration, but somehow redo the calibration ourselves with similar assumptions. So that's what we did here. And we don't achieve a better accuracy than what the whole AgMIP team did. But in terms of consistency among the different models, it's better.
Hello, I'm Jelly from Lebanese Central of Landscape Research. I'm quite interested in your topic because I will also work on the GGCMI project in Sub-Saharan Africa. So I know you have really good long-term trial data sets. If we use this kind of data set to calibrate the GGCMI model first and then to upscale these results into the whole Sub-Saharan Africa region, how would you reflect on the predictability of this upscaling, and what are the factors are you going to consider as the most important one, except the climate variation? Thank you.
So I mean, It's great. If you want to calibrate the GGCMI based on local observation, I think that would be a huge step forward in the ag community. But then I didn't understand the last bit of a question. What is it that we expect in terms of?
So, I mean, in the spatial scale, the climate variation may be the main point, but you also mentioned the soil and other factors. So, what
Sure.
That's
That's one of the issues of the spatial application, right? You can calibrate based on good quality data, you know, the depth of the soil, the water holding capacity, and you can see whether your models are good or not. But then when you go spatial, of course, you rely on the quality of the spatial layers that you're using, right? And if you think about soil nutrient, you'd be using maybe the Africa soil grid data. This is as far as I know, this is the best product we have at hand, but it's bad. So that's one big challenge. Of course, but that's the best we have. So let's try, and it still represents the contrast that you have for a single location. It would be wrong. But if you look at contrast with positive from location, I think it's still useful. So if you're planning on doing that, that would still be valid. I think useful.
Thank you. Yeah, very impressive. Especially looking at how you are looking at all the variability. I mean, for the work I do, the modeling I do, capturing the heterogeneity, it's key, it's important. So I'm glad to see that. Are you planning to expand this to other crops in Senegal, like peanuts, for example?
Yeah, very good question.
This is an interesting case.
We would like to, yeah. But then the issue we're facing at the moment is calibration data, as always. But into that process where what we've done now for maize, try and expand it for maybe sorghum, for millet, and also for groundnuts. I'm thinking of other legumes, could be cowpea as well. But it's all based on finding the good data sets, and this requires on-station data, right? Where you're measuring water, leaf area index, this type of things. For groundnut, we have, but we need, I think, to compile the data in a coherent way for different sites, making sure we can evaluate our models.
Thank you. So let's move to the next presentation. Thank you for Fernando.
Hey, hello everybody.
Oh, Jordan, right. All right. So I put in the chat when you are 2 minutes before the end of the presentation, okay?
control.
You can control now.
Okay, let me try. Oh, something is wrong. Let me see. Okay. Let's see. Okay, now. Okay, yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Greetings from Austria. I'm Fernando Orduña, working at YASA here in Austria. So here we are working in this project that we are involved in Saberes. This is a national project. This is for a special project for Mexico, especially for some 8 states in Mexico. These are the one, and we are a big group. Yeah, this is a big consortium that includes local organizations, local farmers, and also educational some institutes, and the international institute that is YASA is the only European partner in this project. And our goal here is to contribute providing models and tools for the local farmers that can be used by them to adapt to the climate change. That is the main goal of this project. This project is also the idea to provide some funding to the local producers to do these adaptations, following some national requirements and some national documentation that is called the PACs. So in this case, we are doing some models. In this case, we work on a crop yield forecasting. In this case, for special for Chiapas, and And we are using, for this case, only national data. In this case, the environmental data comes from Conagua. And also we are using data from the agricultural census from the CIAP. They are also members in this project. We are using to produce this specific model. We are using long short-term memories. In this case, a version that it was introduced by Xiao. This is the sequence-to-sequence model. This model is a couple of neural network that allow us to do predictions for the series of data. And this method is the performance is very good, even better than the traditional long short-term memory methods. And that is why we selected. And this is encode the last diagram. What is the architecture? This is a simple architecture to be used. I'm going fast because, time concerns. Don't avoid to go in deep. What we did is to prove that this model works. We took an exercise that it was done in Bali in Indonesia. They produce also a model to predict the yield for coffee cereza, and they use several two, three methods for do this prediction. And we also introduce another ones that is the LSTM models, and the step there is an issue there, typo, is step is sequence by sequence and ARIMA methods. As you can see in this chart, we have the the line in dark, that this is the value, that is the historical value that is represented by 1. The other points are reflecting the distance to that point, how close was to the prediction for the historical ones for the models. And as we can see on overall results, the sequence is the best algorithm to do this kind of predictions. And in the literature, you can see a lot of different methods also where this method is improving this kind of linear regressions, because it's also doing some optimization methods in the process. Once we did this for replicate this exercise for the belly, then we use the national data to predict the coffee yields, especially for Chiapas. And we are doing this also for the other states that they are coffee producers. And in this case, our results are quite significant because the model is able to reproduce almost the historical data, and also predicting the now 24 is out recently, and the USD also predict some yield first did some forecasting for this also, and we are very close to the USD also predictions. So the idea using these tools is to provide the agricultural sector with these tools that they can predict in short term. We are talking in 2 years maximum. What are the expectations about the yields? Not just for coffee, but we are talking also for wheat, maize, milpa systems, and also agave, and another kind of commodities that they are producing in Mexico. That those are in the list of the Saberes project. Here we can see about the training and validation about using this method. Also the epochs and the error. As we can see, the error is very low. So because also we are using another different techniques to evaluate this kind of models. Now we actually doing also price predictions using Gaussian LSTM models and sequence-to-sequence models. Actually, my colleague from IASA will talk about this in another sessions. And we are also doing this for maize beans. It's already done. Yeah, and the idea is to provide with these tools also for the policymakers to make some decisions about it. And yeah, the idea is we have three levels in this of decision making. First is the local farmers where they will get this information, also the financial information to decide what is the best crop they can produce in their land, and the best techniques that they can implement to be better with the environment in the change. So this is the main idea for the Saberes project, and what is what we are doing now. And yeah, and this we have another tools also, the another dashboard where the policymakers can evaluate what is the performance of each agricultural practice that it was implemented, and how, if these financial models also are, how is the prediction according to the reality that is reported through our app, because we have an app that is called App Saberes, that is the one that is used by the farmers. So this we are trying to implement this model that is going from the milpa to the cloud, so to have a better view. So I'm talking that this is the level of the implementation. This is like regional data that we have by municipality. In this case, in Chiapas, we have a lot of municipalities, and also for Oaxaca. So this is my contribution. If you have any question, happy to answer. So sorry to go very fast, because don't go too in deep about the model and the programming, but the idea is to contribute with the Mexican producers to make the better decisions, to manage their.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions? Yes.
Fernando, I know that in the north of Mexico, the challenge is pretty much water scarcity. Which are the climate change challenges in the center south of Mexico, in states like Chiapas, Oaxaca? Which are the main climate change problems or risks? If you could hear me.
Yeah. Sorry, I can understand. I can hear what's the question.
I think you mentioned the idea is to see how to adapt to potential climate impacts in those states.
Yes.
So which are the main climate change risks in states like Chiapas and Oaxaca?
Well, the almost for some municipalities also is the raining. For other there is no raining, and for another is also fires. So there are many risks, and that is why we actually including the extreme events in our emulations to provide more idea of what could happening. Also, we are trying to implement also case-based reasoning to get the experience from the locals and to interpret this in the what is happening, what could happen according to the experience by this token experience from the farmers, that we are trying to do this here also. Yeah, but there are many risks. Also, another risk is something that is not very talking too much. Well, these last days it was the violence in the in the roads in Chiapas, for instance. Many things that are in the risk, but for some things we can do nothing for in this like this case. And there are many other things that the people is talking, but yeah, we cannot put that in our modeling. But in financial costs, yes, in some way we need to put something about it, because the numbers are getting increased because of these kind of things. Also, this financing model that we are elaborating to be presented for the farmers is with the national banks, also Ibero-American Bank, that will provide these loans for the local farmers to adapt
Thanks.
to do the techniques, to implement the techniques.
Any other question?
I have two quick questions. One is about this app, Saberes. How do farmers have access to it, and how frequently it has to be updated, or how is it managed? And the second question is, are there plans to expand this work to other regions in Latin America? I saw that IIC is one of the partners, and probably they are interested in expanding to other countries.
Yes. Well, regarding the app, this app is yes, it's like to be mandatory for the people who get the loan to in the project, and they need to be reporting the activities, what they're doing, what are the techniques they are doing, and what are the measures they are taking, and even the economic, yeah, talking about fertilizers, talking about everything, what they are doing in this. For this, we have the local organizations. Yeah, we have a lot of local organizations that are in charge and in communications, also techniques that is going to visit the farmers to do the evaluations. So in this project, this is a big project. We are talking about is 26 millions of euros. It's a lot of money. And then this is because there is a lot to do in the field. For the other, yes, the idea is this is a starting point for these 8 states, but there are another state that we are including also the climatic tables where CIMIT is involved also, and we also using this CIMIT data they just released. And yeah, the idea is through the app and the SAPI system is to be implemented nationally. Also using the Fable calculator that Johannes just was talking about in the last presentation. This is in relation also in this project.
You change this, right? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Let's move now to Olorunso and Kisei. Yeah, you're here. I hope I'm pronouncing good your name.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. So my name is Jacob. I'm presenting on behalf of. Yes.
It has a slightly face, so.
Okay. Can I use the?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, I think that's good. Yeah. Okay, so we are going back to Senegal. Are you ready, guys? It's a very long trip. So, well, I'm going to talk about how climate smart technologies can minimize risk in millets. So, yeah, I was very interested to see a presentation from Senegal, and it was on maize, and this one is on millet. So, yeah, let's go. Well, this is a story probably everybody knows that climate change and climate variability really threaten production, especially in rain-fed system. So when we talk about Senegal or Sahel generally, this is one of the country that's biggest population of farmers depend on rain-fed system. And millet is one of the staple crop, and therefore the impact of climate change and climate variability also impact this good and nice crop, which has a lot of use in Senegal. But a lot of studies as well, experience that we have in Senegal and other projects as well that we have conducted in Senegal have shown that millet, although despite the impact of climate variability, but millet has proved to be drought tolerant crop, and therefore some studies have regarded it as a climate smart crop. However, when we go to the field and talk to the farmers and record the yield that they're getting, the productivity is still very low. And therefore, this also calls for climate resilience agricultural practices. The main reason for low yield variability in this country, as many other African countries, is the agricultural practice, the agronomic practice that the farmers are doing before the season and during the season, simply has a significant effect to the productivity. And therefore, we advocate for climate smart agricultural practices in order to improve the yields. So through the ACRA project, that is a project that is a CGR project that has been implemented in 60 countries in the Western Africa, Southern and East Africa. We have designed and implemented various climate smart agriculture practices that have proved were better and improved the production in millet. So, well, there is a paper that I'll share the details later that have all the details about what kind of climate smart agriculture practice that were implemented in the area that I'm going to talk about and what we found. But generally, in a nutshell, what we found that compared to the farmer practices, climate smart agriculture practices had a greater impact. So we implemented various technologies such as microdosing, various fertilizer strategies, so changing the planting density, as well as employing or deploying various digital tools to help the farmers to make better decisions. And all those, we found that they were impactful to the farmers. For the millet, for example, to talk about, we found that the climate smart agriculture technology were able to increase the yields compared to the local practices, were able to increase the yield up to 40%. So that is the data that we collected between the year 2022 to 2023 and 2024 in Senegal. So this is what basically I was talking about, that there are a lot of evidence in literature that have shown that if you have various climate smart agriculture practices such as improved variety, microdosing, fertilizer, and planting density strategies, you can improve the millet yield, as well as integration of various digital technology such as agro-advisory tools. So the objective of this study was to extend what the result that we have obtained through the ACRA project and look into those practices in the future climate. So we tried to do the same thing, but now with some simulation to see how these practices will be sustainable in the future climate. So this is a study area, again, to iterate. We concentrated in 4 agroecological zones. So this agroecological zone here is the higher rainfall zone, as well as this one is higher, but is not as this one. This is what is called the Eastern Upper Casamance region, and this one is now known as the New Peanut Basin. But the upper 2, which is the Old Peanut Basin and the Silver Pastoral zones, these are low rainfall zones. So we tested this. This is where the project actually sites were, and in each zone we had at least 6 villages that we experimented. Well, just to give you a bit of how we did this, so we had data set from various model. You can see the model that we used and their spatial resolution as well. And we had to do the projection in the mid-century, that is between 2040 to 2069. And not only that, but also we had some feed data that we collected during the project that were used for the model calibration and the validation. And these were through surveys and focus group discussion, as well as we had some experiment in those villages that we collected the yield data for calibration. Well, the approach, the model that we used, the DSAT, and so how the DSAT was used, it was used to simulate the millet growth and yield under various management practices. So things like planting density, planting windows, densities, together with fertilizer and the climate scenario, because this study was to, yes, the objective was to understand what we have done in the past 3 years, if they are profitable in the future climate. So to give you a bit of what the farmers are doing, for example, in case of in the case of the density, for example, the farmer practices for millets, that's the practice. They use 12,500 hills per hectare. But for the improved strategies that we implemented in ACRA project was twice that value. And also there are local varieties that the farmer will use. We tested those against the improved varieties such as the one that are shown, the Sosat and the dual purpose millets. In terms of the climate change, so we analyzed various parameters such as precipitation and temperature. As well, we concentrated on the shift of onset, because for Senegal, for those who have experience in Senegal, onset is very, very important. That the day when the rainfall starts is very important for the farmers, because most of the farmers, they depend much on this to do their sowing strategies. Well, the duration of rainfall as well. That's what I mean, the duration and also the variability in rain season. Those are the kind of things that we use. So some preliminary results here, because we need to do more analysis with it. That's why I'm calling this preliminary results. But we have found a lot of variability, but in many agroecological zones, 3 of them, they show that the rainfall is going to decrease significantly, and also the length of the growing period as well is going to decrease, except one agroecological zones, which is the Old Peanut Basin. If you remember, if you remember the map that I showed, that's the most western of, the most western north part of Senegal. Well, again, also we found similar results, like the temperature by the mid-century is going to increase significantly for both low emission and high emission scenario. So now here are the results of, the strategies, the climate smart smart agriculture practice that we implemented the project. So these are the results of how we found they are going to behave in the future scenario. As you can see here, starting with the planting density, we found that however, we found that the planting density was significant in the current climate, but in the future scenario, we found that it was there were slightly differences between the population and however, the low population is important for the harsh environment or agricultural zones such as the silver pastoral zone. So this one is benefit because you can see from the box plots that there's no much difference between the higher population and low population. So for this zone, that is important. Well, going to variety selection, we found that the dual purpose was performing better, especially in the low rainfall zone. Again, talking about the fertilizer strategies, we found that, so I'm going to explain a little bit about this one. The F1, F2, the one that's with no units or anything. The first one is the NPK, and the second one is urea for 60%. And what you see, the ton per hectare, that is the cow manure. So these are the strategies the farmers that are using. We also, we also tried that, but we found that putting a lot of nitrogen does not yield anything, but nitrogen of 75 kg per hectare, and a combination of nitrogen 75 kg per hectare and 2 tons of cow manure is enough to give a good yield almost across all the agroecological zone. So, by conclusion, we have seen that the low rainfall zone, like the silver pastoral zone, faces significant climate change impact, like decrease in duration of rainfall season. Not only that, but higher temperature together with reduced rainfall. So the strategies that we have shown, or the combined strategies that agronomic and fertilizer as well, can mitigate better these impacts in these areas. So the next step that we are considering is to perform some more statistical analysis to understand the interaction between the variable that we have seen, and also include in our simulation some diversification option, because that is what the farmers are doing over there, and that's what's being promoted, and also include some social economic factors in order to have some holistic recommendation. Well, so that's the team actually working in this work. And by that, thank you for listening.
Petrus? Yes.
With the socioeconomic analysis that you guys are looking at, what kind of indicators are you guys considering? Are you doing anything with what the labor requirements are for some of the practices that you're looking at?
Yeah, so labor requirements is one, but also access to inputs as well is another thing. Because yes, you can have a better strategy, but if a farmer has no ability or has low purchasing capacity, for example, that's another issue there. So we're going to also to look at those things and see how they are going to affect their productivity, either improving it or decreasing the productivity. As well, it's like market access, yeah, and other socioeconomic factors.
Yeah, I had a similar comment thinking about the microdose in the digital technologies, whether farmers have the ability to implement those. So adoption analysis could be helpful. Phyllis.
My question is also around that, but also to indicate that there are other issues also to do with the quality of the flour that they get from the grain, which could be, so you could have high yielding variety, but then the quality or the texture of the flour would determine whether farmers will adopt it or not. And that's happens in the case of maize and other cereals. So you should open it broadly, maybe not to show economic analysis that scientists alone, private scientists will do, but to engage a social economic. Because when I was looking at, doubling the population, what we get compared to farmers' practice, I was thinking maybe farmers have a reason for sticking to half the population. So a deeper dive into that would also be interesting.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, points taken. I think yeah, it is true. Quality is very important. Says, for example, if you consider how millet is being used in Senegal, yeah, quality is very, very important. They use it for making a lot of starting with porridge in the morning, we try to millet and a lot of food. So quality is very important. Yes, we look at that. Thank you.
One more question.
Very quickly, just wondering, how is the condition of the soil in those sites? For example, how is soil acidity? How is the level of the other nutrients? Because if they are low, actually, there will be no response to nitrogen fertilizer. So I am just wondering if you have like a kind of blocked those possible interferences among those sites. I don't know. Do you have that information? That will be interesting to bring that information in the paper or the report.
Yeah. Yes, we took in the beginning of the project, we had in those 6 villages, we had at least soil sample taken in each village. And what I can remember actually from the soil analysis is that the organic carbon were very low, but as well as the nitrogen, I can't remember the details, but the upper, for example, the area in the silver pasture and the upper, the old peanut basin, those are the agroecological zones in the northern part, were very critical. All the nutrients in the soil were very, very low.
Have you corrected, for example, have you applied lime or, sorry, the farmers have applied limestone or something like that to reduce acidity, allow roots to go down in the fire?
Not really, I'm not sure about that. Yeah, maybe the practice that they're doing, but don't have that information.
We can continue after we finish or at dinner. Let's have the last presentation, last but not least. And this should be a good one because my name is in there. Is it though? Yeah. Subhash?
So now we will go to India. Good evening to all. But in our place now it is early morning. 12 hours difference. So anyway, so now we'll move to this integrated adaptation strategies of our rice seed system. And basically, I have two parts. One is from AgMIP ICR collaborative project. There we have linked the climate, crop model, then socioeconomic model. Then using the same data set, we have tried to use APSIM with different modeling framework. There we have used the NICRA, that is National Initiative on Climate Resilient Agriculture of ICR. That is a flagship program of ICR. There we have did some other work that I will indicate both paper. And these are some of the facts related with the climate change aspect. In India, as far as India is concerned, the surface air temperature, particularly the night temperature, is expected to increase further, and also the rainfall. Basically, as far as India is concerned, rainfall means monsoon rainfall. It's 4 months, that is June, July, August, September. Around 70 to 80% of the rainfall received during that 4 months. And that also is expected to increase. The extreme rainfall events also expected to increase. And you see, as far as India is concerned, more than 80% of the farming community, that is small and marginal farming community. That means they have less than 2 hectare land. And this is as far as when we see the annual temperature is concerned, it is slowly increasing for the last more than 100 years. And as far as rainfall is concerned, here there is a lot of variation. Every year there is a lot of variability is there. As far as very heavy or extreme rainfall events are concerned, when we see there are some places there are more than 13 events occurred in some places. So yeah. So then, and also the impact of extreme weather events also because of different activities like you see the snow rainfall, cold wave, heat wave, as well as lightning, thunderstorm, several deaths reported in different parts of the area. And as far as India is concerned, we have more than 80 cropping systems that are the predominant cropping system across India. And under AgMIP project, we have used the 29 GCMs and 2 crop models, then socioeconomic models. We have tried to link all these things. And this is the study area. There is Meerut district. We have chosen 120 farmers, and the main cropping system is rice wheat and sugarcane wheat, as well as some minor crops are that is maize and sorghum. And most of the households, they have the livestock component, cow or buffalo they have. And most of these, they will use the FIF for the field purpose. And also, most of what they are doing is they will use their products mostly for household purpose. And some, the leftover, something, particularly sugarcane and wheat, they will sell to the market. They will sell to the market. And these are the GCMs we have used and 29 GCMs. And as for the protocol, we have selected 5 GCMs based on the subsetting. And these are the difference between the models as well as the baseline data. There is a lot of increase of temperature as well as the rainfall pattern. And these are the abstract of the farm survey data. When we see the household, the family size is around 6, and the operational land holding size is 1.68 hectare. So these are the general characteristics of abstract of farm, and rice variety, wheat variety, these are the predominant variety they are growing. And these are the existing farming system. These are the data set we have used for the trade-off analysis and minimum data set modeling, economic modeling. And we have collected some of the data from the secondary sources, and we have used. And we have interaction with the farmers. That means from the beginning itself, we have surveyed the farmers in that area, then researchers and scientists in that area. We have a lot of interaction with researchers. These are at the district level. Then we have the old district level development agencies as well as the universities in that area. Then after that, state level, because as far as India is concerned, agriculture is a state subject. So we have the discussion with the state level agricultural policy development officials, and then at the country level also we have stakeholder meeting. So these are the interactions with the different stakeholders at different levels, and we have found out two pathways. One is green agriculture pathway. The green agriculture pathway means in that better management of natural resources, and also less degradation, low cost of production, sustainable mechanization. In that area, the region becomes food secure on sustainable way. This is the sustainable pathway. And another one is grey agriculture pathway. Here, because of the population growth, there may be agricultural intensification will be higher, then higher exploitation of natural resources, then declining land productivity, out migration of laborers. In that case, how will be the agriculture? That we have. These are the list of drivers and variables we have used under different categories like policy, institutional, socio-economic aspects, and it is a direction of change in future, because all these values we got from the interaction with the farming community, interaction with the researchers, as well as from the research literature. Then these are the drivers we have used for technology as well as the biophysical, because when we talk about the climate change in 2050, there may be technology, there may be a lot of technology developed that also we have considered. And these are the identified tested adaptation packages we have used in that area. That is the change of shift of the date of sowing, and then use of the short duration varieties, and for particularly for these rice as well as wheat, then balanced fertilizer application. These are the tested application we have used. And the takeaway message from the AgMIP ICR collaborative project is, you see, in the 2050, the impact of climate change, rice yield will be around 12% decrease, wheat yield around 24%, and net farm in return will be 14% decrease. But when the vulnerability to climate change will be, in the current farming system, it is 74%. And when we see the 2050 farming systems, that is the percentage of rice wheat farm households vulnerable to climate change will be 52 under the sustainable development pathway, but it will be 55% under unsustainable grey pathway. So based on this research, what we did is, this 120 farmers we have used in the first study. The second study, what we did is, we have used the APSIM model, that is APSFA model, that is extension of APSIM model, that we tried with the 30 farmers data. And we have again surveyed the same farmers, and we have the earlier also. Then we have incorporated something, and I will show the one farmer here. That family, he's having, that farmer is saying rice, wheat, black gram, fodder, then sugarcane also. And this is livestock, 1 or 2 buffaloes. These component we have incorporated into the model. Earlier we have used only rice wheat system. Here we have incorporated the black gram, sugarcane also, but we could not do fodder. We have incorporated some percentage, because we could not simulate the fodder. And then this is some nutshell of some of the farmers. Suppose one farmer, 2.4, he is having 2 bull, and this is the allocation of different crops. And for Kharif, there are 2 seasons in India. One is Kharif, another one is Rabi. Kharif means this is monsoon season rainfall, that monsoon season crop, and after that they will grow the Rabi crop. And after that, again, some farmers, if they have the resources, they will do the summer crop also. So like that, 3 crops they will grow. And buffalo or cattle they have. And like that, some example. And one farmer, just 2.4, actually we have a discussion with the farmers. They are growing rice, sugarcane, mustard, wheat, and fodder, and livestock. They are telling that because of there is lot of uncertainty in rainfall, particularly unseasonal rainfall during the wheat season, they may change the crop. Some area they may change it to sugarcane, and also rice. Rice is very difficult because unseasonal rainfall again. That way they will change to sugarcane, and some area they will change to mustard. And because they are getting more profit under livestock, they want to change more livestock. that means they need to grow more fodder. So there may be shift in the crop area in future. So that we have incorporated into the model. And these are the scenario for the 2050, 2040, because if you change the component, that means suppose they want to incorporate the livestock, they want more water. Again, then the sugarcane, they are shifting to sugarcane, wheat to sugarcane. And also no change in mustard area because they are using this mustard for their own purpose. So they are not interested to change the mustard area. And this component we have introduced, incorporated in the system, then we found that this is around a 17% reduction in profit under baseline. And however, this increased to 29% in 2040. And that means there is a 20% reduction in plant available water because of the change in crop. And here we have modified the area also. There we found that around 90% reduction. And when we see, suppose you have the 90% change is their reduction, then we need to incorporate some adaptation measures such as new high yielding varieties, balanced fertilizer application, crop diversification, etc. We need to incorporate into the modeling framework. And also we need to get the accurate result. We need to incorporate the livestock component as well as the fodder simulation that we will do. This work is in progress, and that's all. Thank you for your patient listening.
Questions for Subhash?
So you had the slide there with the projected changes in yields, like -12 for rice, and how does that compare in terms of recent trends, just yield changes in India? Is that change quite a bit larger or smaller than just the average trend in terms of what's going on with yield?
We have incorporated the technology trend out because every year the increase will be there. The technology trend, because we are introducing new varieties, the technology trend also we have incorporated in the model.
But I mean, comparatively, so 12% to 2040.
How does the incorporation only this 12%?
But what I'm asking is, like, how does that change compare to the trend that you have in terms of the yield increases? But is it higher? Is it lower? Like, how big of to give context of how big? So is it 12% reduction in rice? Is that a substantial reduction on where you would have been by 2040, or is that so? Like, what is your projection to 2040 without that change?
Yes.
And you use AgMIP10?
For second study.
For
the second study, we have
the 12% decrease that's simulated.
That is first one we have used both.
Okay.
Yeah. And second study we have used only AgMIP. Yeah.
But the second study is only a few farmers.
Yeah, only few farmers. We need to incorporate the other farmers also, but it will take time. That's why we are doing that.
Anyone else? If not, then, well, thank you very much for staying a little bit longer. We have a few minutes to go have our reception. And thank you for coming to this.
Yeah.
You really need to make
Voy a la tenaz.
Está rico. Fuimos a